When you speak and share what's on your mind, are you speaking as your true and authentic self? I mean, how do you even know if you're doing that? And why is it important? Well, in this video, I'm going to be covering all of those things. Now, when we speak, when we share what's on our mind, there are really three components to it in terms of getting our message across. One is the actual act of speaking, so there's the doing part, and that can require courage sometimes if we're speaking up for ourselves or asking for what we want. And then there's the what you say part, which is what I'm talking about in this video. And then there's the how we say it. So when it comes to what we say, there are some big benefits when we're able to speak as our authentic selves. When we do that, people get to see the real you, and so our relationships get closer and stronger. We also feel a greater sense of personal integrity, and we get more control over the direction of our life because we're asking for what it is that we truly want. But I don't know about you. No one actually taught me how to connect with and speak from my authentic voice. So how do you really know? Like many of the participants in my coaching program, I was brought up with messages like, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And to really be nice and polite and to fit in. So I was brought up in a way that had me develop a belief that the way to be loved and the way to be noticed and the way to be valued was to actually present a version of myself that pleased others and had me fit in. Now, of course, the opposite is actually true. The way that we develop those authentic relationships, the way we live life on our own terms is by being true to ourselves, is by connecting and speaking from that authentic voice. So how do you actually know if you are or not? And I mean, that can be a valid question if you have been disconnected from your authentic self and your authentic voice for a very long time. So if you're not sure if you're speaking from your authentic self, here's perhaps three clues that might guide you. The first thing to know is whether you actually, or the first question to ask yourself is, do I know myself? Now, it can sound like a strange kind of thing, but if you don't know yourself well, you can tend to be quite indecisive. So a clue that you may not know yourself very well is that when somebody asks you, what do you want for dinner? You might go, I don't really know, whatever you want. Or if someone asks you, what do you want to do on the weekend? You're not really sure. Or someone might say, where are you going to go for your next holiday? And you're not really sure where you want to go. So a lot of uncertainty, a lot of indecision can be a clue that you're a little bit disconnected from your authentic voice. Another clue is, do you trust yourself? Now that can sound a little bit strange as well, but just to explain, when you create trust with somebody else, it's because they say something, they say they're going to do something. They might say, for example, hey, I'll pick you up at 12 o'clock tomorrow and we'll go to the cafe and we'll have lunch. And they turn up at 12 o'clock and you go to the cafe and you have lunch. And they do that consistently over time. Now, what happens then when people turn up and do what they say is you develop trust with them. You can rely on them. But how well do you do that for yourself? So how well do you turn up for yourself? Now, a clue can be, well, you might say, tomorrow I'm going to go for a swim. And tomorrow comes and the end of the day and you haven't actually gone for a swim. Or you might say, have this long list of things that you're planning to do and you consistently find that you don't actually get many of them done. So you make promises to yourself, but they don't actually happen. And so there's a lot of examples where you've said something to yourself, but you haven't followed through. So that's the second clue. Now, the third clue is that you don't hear or act on your intuition, so your gut feeling. If you've been a long way from your authentic voice for a long time, it may be really hard to hear what's going on the inside. But you know that gut feeling that you have that happens when someone says something or asks you to do something, you go, That just doesn't feel right. My gut feeling is actually no. That's your intuition speaking, and your intuition is the sound of your heart. It gives you clues about your direction. And so if you're not listening to that, or if you're not hearing it or not acting on it, then that can be another clue that you're a little bit disconnected from your authentic voice, and that your decisions are being made by sourcing advice or looking for direction outside of yourself rather than from the inside. So 3 clues that you may be a little bit disconnected from your authentic voice are to consider: how well do I know myself? How decisive am I? How good am I at putting my thoughts forward or my opinion forward? How well do I know myself? The second one is: how well do I trust myself? Do I keep my word? Do I go inside and listen to my intuition to give me a sense of direction? So if you have found from contemplating or reflecting on those questions that you are a little bit away from your authentic self, that maybe you are presenting yourself rather than simply being yourself when you speak, here are 3 ideas that may be of value. The first idea is to get to know yourself. If you've been disconnected from yourself, then it might be difficult for you to have opinions and to speak from your authentic self because you don't really sure what it is that you like or want. Now, Socrates was a Greek philosopher who lived way back in 400 BC, but he said that to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. Now, Socrates didn't say going to school was the beginning of wisdom, or asking your parents was the beginning of wisdom, or getting a qualification in something was the beginning of wisdom. He said to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. And so knowing yourself is the way that we develop our true and authentic essence of who we are. Now, if you haven't done this before, just a really useful way to start to do that is to ask yourself a whole lot of questions and to get out a journal and to write answers to them. You can start with simple things like, what do I want to wear? Or what do I want to eat? Or what do I want to do at Christmas time? And also, what do I think about things? So what do I think about these current affairs at the moment? What do I think about climate change? What do I think about politics? So take some time to really get to know yourself. Now, there's a really good book that can help with that has some even more useful questions, and that's this one by Lisa O'Neill, which is Everything You Want and How to Get It. This gives you some really good questions that can help with getting to know yourself. So that can be the first useful thing to do, is to really ask yourself a whole bunch of questions to help you get to know yourself. Now, the second thing to do, or the second idea, is to work on trusting yourself. Now, this really comes back to being your word. So only write down or say things that you're actually going to commit to. That way you can start to build a practice of relying on yourself. Now, in the book, The 4 Agreements, the first agreement, which is all about how do we live a life that taps into our personal power, the first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. And that's this book here by Don Miguel Ruiz, which is a really great little book too that I can highly recommend. So he talks about how we source our power, and that when we say something, our words are very powerful. So trusting yourself is all about keeping your word. And you can practice that by making, little promises to yourself that you keep. And start small, like, tomorrow I'm going to get up 10 minutes earlier, or tomorrow I'm going to call this one friend, or tomorrow I'm going to drink 1 glass of water. So just something that has you start small and starts to build trust in yourself. That's one way to connect to your authentic voice. The third idea is to connect to your intuition and to use that gut feeling as a bit of a guide for your direction and for your voice. Now, in our mind-filled, thought-filled world, we can actually let our mind take over and guide us in terms of what it is that we say. And we forget to really connect in and drop into our heart and into our gut feeling. And I think Clarissa Pinkola Estes has a really nice quote about this in her book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I thought I would read that to you. Now, she does refer to women, but it does apply to all genders. She says, the modern woman is a blur of activity. She's pressured to be all things to all people. The old knowing is long overdue. She is the voice that says, this way. This way. With her as ally, as leader, model, teacher, we see not through two eyes, but the eyes of intuition, which is many-eyed. When we assert intuition, we see ourselves like the starry night. We gaze at the world through 1,000 eyes. Now, seeing the world through 1,000 eyes by connecting into our intuition is much more appealing to me than simply seeing the world through two eyes. And so that's the benefit of being able to take the time to really connect into our inner voice. Now, practical ways to do that are taking time to simply cultivate a sense of calmness, and that can be through meditation, can be through connecting to nature, can be simply sitting in nature, sitting alone by yourself, taking time out to simply be. That's when we quiet the external noise, is when we're able to hear what's going on the inside. So 3 ideas that may be useful for connecting to your authentic voice, and practices that you can consider putting into place. Firstly is to know yourself. Secondly is to trust yourself. And thirdly is to connect to your intuition and to listen to yourself. I hope you found those ideas of value, and if you'd like more content from me, then please feel free to visit my website at sharonnatoli.com and sign up for my fortnightly dose of inspiration. I share articles on finding your voice and quotes and keep you informed of upcoming events. You'll also find what's coming up in terms of events that you might like to sign up for on the events tab at my website. In the meantime, carry on being more of who you already are.